Picture this. It's the 2015 MTV Video Music Awards, a night that's supposed to be all about celebrating music. But then, one question, just 4 little words, delivered with pure ice, completely hijacks the entire show. Miley, what's good? Those words just hung in the air, right? The tension was so thick you could feel it through the screen, as millions watched live, all wondering, is this real, or is this the most insane stunt in VMA history? This wasn't just some random celebrity fight, it was a cultural firework, and the fuse had been burning for years. The 2015 MTV VMAs. Now, the VMAs are already famous for their off-the-cuff moments and serious drama. But that year, something felt different. The spotlight wasn't just on the shiny Moonman trophies or the killer performances. It was locked onto this simmering feud that was about to explode, live on stage. We had Nicki Minaj, the undisputed queen of rap, and Miley Cyrus, the always provocative pop star who also happened to be hosting that night. Let's be real, they were on a collision course. So tonight, we're not just rewatching that legendary confrontation, we're digging into it. We'll look at the explosive buildup, every supercharged second of that on-air clash, the absolute chaos that erupted right after, and why this moment is still burned into our pop culture brains. What actually happened between Nicki Minaj and Miley Cyrus? Let's get into it. To really get why things blew up on that VMA stage, we've got to look at Miley Cyrus's actions that lit the fuse. Just a few days before the awards show on August 30th, Miley, who was all set to host, did an interview with the New York Times. And, well, she didn't exactly hold back, especially when Nicki Minaj's name came up. See, earlier that summer, Nicki had spoken out about her frustration. Her groundbreaking Anaconda music video didn't get a nomination for Video of the Year. Nicki pointed out a pattern. MTV, she suggested, often celebrated women with very slim bodies and seemed hesitant to fully recognize Black female artists' cultural impact. This led to a brief Twitter back and forth with Taylor Swift, who initially misunderstood Nicki's comments but later apologized, understanding Nicki was addressing a larger systemic issue. But Miley, in her New York Times interview, offered a different, and many felt dismissive, take on Nicki's complaints. Miley was quoted saying that Nicki's complaints were not polite and just about herself. She even added, "You made it about you." Not to sound like a bitch, but that's like, I didn't get my VMA. Ouch. Miley didn't stop there. She opined on how Nicki should have handled it. If you do things with an open heart and you come at things with love, you would be heard and I would respect your statement. But I don't respect your statement because of the anger that came with it. These words from Miley, published right before the VMAs, struck many, and it seems Nicki herself, as condescending. More than that, they appeared to ignore the serious issues of racial bias and representation Nicki was highlighting. Here was Miley, a white artist who had frequently incorporated elements of Black culture into her work, publicly scolding a Black woman for speaking out. The stage wasn't just set for the VMAs, Miley's comments practically wired it for a showdown. Those remarks were out there, hanging heavy, and Nicki Minaj isn't known for letting such things slide. For Nicki Minaj, the tension wasn't solely about Miley's recent interview. There was a history that, from Nicki's perspective, likely added layers to the building frustration. Back in 2014, Miley had photoshopped her head onto Nicki Minaj's body from the iconic Anaconda album cover, even altering the skin tone to, as Miley put it, make it look more natural. At the time, some might have dismissed it as social media antics. But looking back, particularly after the 2015 VMA drama and conversations about cultural appropriation, that act took on a more problematic light, feeding into the narrative that Miley Cyrus borrowed from Black culture without full understanding or respect. Nicki's complaints about the VMA nominations were never just about Anaconda or personal snubs. She was voicing a frustration many Black artists had long felt about their cultural contributions being adopted and then undervalued. She was highlighting how Black women in entertainment often face shifting goalposts, needing to be twice as good for half the recognition. Her tweets were a critique of an entire system, a system that Miley Cyrus, in that New York Times interview, either didn't grasp or chose to disregard. That interview didn't just present Miley as opinionated, it showed her using her substantial platform to essentially invalidate Nicki's experience and her entire critique. By framing Nicki's concerns as merely impolite or self-absorbed, Miley dismissed the gravity of the larger conversation about race and recognition Nicki was attempting to initiate. It was this dismissal, this feeling of being condescended to from a position of privilege, that deeply resonated, not just with Nicki, but with many who understood the stakes. The VMA stage, with Miley as host, was about to become the arena where these simmering tensions, fueled by Nicki's profound sense of injustice, would be broadcast. As Miley Cyrus took center stage to host the 2015 VMAs, the vibe at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles on August 30th was absolutely electric. It's the VMAs, right? Miley promised an outrageous and unpredictable show, and she definitely delivered on that, though perhaps not entirely in the way she'd imagined, especially with the shadow of her recent New York Times interview hanging over her hosting duties. The night was packed with her signature wild outfits and edgy jokes. But under all that typical VMA craziness, that New York Times interview, and Miley's comments within it, were like a dark cloud. Anyone who'd read it, anyone aware of the nomination drama, knew there was a potential bomb in the room, perhaps a pink glitter bomb, given Miley's VMA wardrobe choices. Nicki Minaj was also a huge presence that night. She performed, was up for awards, and was, as always, a total powerhouse. As the show, under Miley's stewardship, rolled on with its performances and awards, the real question wasn't if Miley's interview comments would come up, but how and when. Would it be a subtle lyric, a sharp comment in a skit, or something far more direct, aimed right at the host? Apparently, even the VMA producers, with Miley at the helm of the show, sensed the tension. A little drama never hurts ratings, but the sheer realness of what was about to unfold likely surpassed any expectations for manufactured entertainment. One could feel the anticipation in the air, whether the audience at large knew the whole backstory involving Miley's interview or not. They were about to find out. The moment finally hit, and it began with Nicki Minaj appearing almost deceptively calm. She walked onto the stage, looking absolutely regal, to accept the award for Best Hip-Hop Video for Anaconda. Nicki delivered her initial thank yous, her pastor, her fans, the barbs, standard acceptance speech fare. But then, her entire demeanor shifted. That smile tightened, her eyes found their target, and the energy in the arena crackled. With the Moon Man in her hand, Nicki paused. Then, looking straight across the stage at Miley Cyrus, who was at her hosting spot, she delivered the line that would instantly become a pop culture legend. And now, back to this bitch that had a lot to say about me the other day in the press. Nicki paused again, letting the weight of her words sink in before dropping her iconic challenge. Miley, what's good? Nicki's delivery was everything. It wasn't shouted, but it was piercingly sharp, conveying an undeniable wave of anger and accusation. It was a direct call-out, live, completely unscripted, and utterly unavoidable, initiated by Nicki with full force. The cameras immediately snapped to Miley. Her face was a flash of shock, as if completely blindsided, before her host instincts and public persona tried to kick back in. She attempted to recover, her voice a little shaky, but aiming for nonchalance. Hey, we're all in this industry. We all do interviews, and we all know how they manipulate shit. Then she added with forced brightness, Nicki, congratulations. Miley quickly tried to pivot to get back to hosting, mentioning voting for the Artist to Watch award. But the damage was done. As Miley spoke, the camera cut back to Nicki, who was visibly still furious. Her microphone was reportedly cut, but her mouthing words and gesturing made it crystal clear that, in her mind, this confrontation was not over. Reports later suggested Nicki was mouthing something like, "Don't play with me." The tension was palpable. Even Nicki's family in the audience looked shocked and intense, mirroring the moment's vibe. The rawness of Nicki's anger, juxtaposed with Miley's surprise, heavily indicated this was 100% real, a genuine demand for accountability from Nicki. Those few seconds after Nicki Minaj dropped Miley, "What's good?" felt like an eternity. On stage, Miley Cyrus, though clearly rattled, tried to deflect by blaming media manipulation, a classic move that felt weak against Nicki's directness. And Nicki, her expression and continued mouthing of words after her mic was cut clearly showed she wasn't buying Miley's explanation. Backstage, reports indicated that Nicki was genuinely livid, confirming this confrontation was not a prearranged stunt for ratings, a theory that immediately began circulating. Her raw emotion was palpable, even through the screen. The media, fueled by Nicki's bold move, went into a frenzy. Nicki Minaj calls out Miley Cyrus, screamed headlines. Social media, especially Twitter, exploded. Miley, what's good? Nicki's words became an instant global trend, sparking thousands of memes, GIFs, and hot takes within minutes. People replayed the clip, analyzing Nicki's unwavering stare, Miley's deer-in-the-headlights look, and the cut mics. Many praised Nicki for her boldness, for refusing to let Miley's dismissive comments slide, and for confronting her so publicly. Others found the public nature of the call-out uncomfortable. Regardless of opinion, most agreed. It was unforgettable TV. The question of real or staged dominated, but the intensity of Nicki's anger and Miley's visibly shaken reaction convinced most it was authentic. The Los Angeles Times later called the 2015 VMAs one disastrous mess after another, with the Minaj-Cyrus showdown, sparked by Nicki's challenge, being a standout chaotic moment. If anyone thought Nicki Minaj's onstage confrontation was a fleeting moment of anger, she quickly dispelled that notion in a follow-up interview with the New York Times Magazine, published in October 2015. Away from the VMA stage, Nicki articulated her frustrations with Miley Cyrus with profound clarity and depth, reinforcing her earlier stance. Nicki directly addressed Miley's prior interview comments and what she perceived as Miley's hypocrisy. She stated, "The fact that you feel upset about me speaking on something that affects Black women makes me feel like you have some big balls." Nicki didn't mince words, particularly highlighting Miley's pattern of engaging with Black culture on what seemed like a superficial level. You're in videos with Black men, and you're bringing out Black women on your stages, but you don't want to know how Black women feel about something that's so important? This was the core of Nicki's argument. It wasn't merely about personal insult. It was about a pattern where Miley appeared to embrace the aesthetics of Black culture, music, style, dance, while dismissing the lived experiences and concerns of Black women. Nicki continued, her argument evolving into a powerful statement on the distinction between genuine cultural engagement and appropriation. If you want to enjoy our culture and our lifestyle, bond with us, dance with us, have fun with us, twerk with us, rap with us, then you should also want to know what affects us, what is bothering us, what we feel is unfair to us. You shouldn't not want to know that. These statements from Nicki provided crucial context to her Miley, what's good moment. It demonstrated that her actions weren't driven by petty disrespect, but by a desire to hold Miley accountable for what Nicki viewed as performative engagement with Blackness, selecting the fun aspects while avoiding the more challenging conversations about race and equality. This interview solidified Nicki's position, framing the VMA confrontation not as a mere feud, but as a legitimate critique of cultural appropriation and the silencing of Black women's voices. After her initial onstage attempt to blame media manipulation for the confrontation, Miley Cyrus remained largely silent publicly about Nicki's VMA callout, and the detailed clarifications Nicki later provided in the New York Times Magazine, at least for a significant period. Miley's immediate on-air response was a clear effort to de-escalate and move on. In the subsequent days and weeks, she mostly avoided addressing the "Miley, what's good?" moment itself, allowing the media storm to run its course. Given that Miley had built her career on being outspoken and unfiltered, her relative quiet on this specific issue, especially concerning the deeper points Nicki raised about cultural appropriation and respect, was noticeable to many. Miley's initial defense, blaming the press, completely sidestepped the core of Nicki's critique, which focused on Miley's own words and her perceived attitude in the original New York Times interview. Over the years, both artists have continued their careers, evolving and changing. There have been no major public reconciliations or further direct altercations regarding this specific 2015 incident. The VMA moment remains a stark, unresolved point of tension in their history. Miley has, at various times, addressed accusations of cultural appropriation more broadly, sometimes sounding remorseful, other times defensive. However, a direct, in-depth public reflection from Miley on the "Miley, what's good?" months exchange and the specific grievances Nicki articulated about her back in 2015 has not materialized. For many observers, this lack of a detailed public response from Miley to Nicki's clear points has left the questions Nicki raised lingering, making the VMA moment feel less like a closed chapter and more like an ongoing, unresolved cultural dialogue. Miley, what's good? Almost instantly, Nicki Minaj's words became far more than a heated question in a celebrity feud. They morphed into cultural shorthand, a pervasive meme, a catchphrase on merchandise, and endlessly tweeted. But the true significance of Nicki's challenge goes much deeper than its meme-worthiness. That confrontation at the 2015 VMAs, initiated by Nicki, thrust uncomfortable yet essential conversations about race, cultural appropriation, and power dynamics within the entertainment industry into the mainstream spotlight. Nicki Minaj wasn't just airing a personal grievance. She was vocalizing a frustration felt by countless Black artists and individuals who witness elements of their culture being adopted and often commodified by white artists, sometimes without credit, understanding, or respect for its origins. Miley Cyrus, who at that point was heavily incorporating hip-hop aesthetics and Black cultural styles into her persona, became the focal point for this larger critique due to Nicki's direct address. Nicki's challenge compelled a public examination of what it means to engage with another's culture. Was it appreciation or appropriation? Was it a genuine exchange? Or, as Nicki suggested in her follow-up interview, a superficial interaction that enjoyed the fun parts while ignoring the struggles of the culture's creators? The moment also, through Nicki's stand, highlighted intersectionality, how race, gender, and power intersect, very publicly. Here was Nicki, a Black woman in a male-dominated genre and a white-dominated industry, speaking her truth to power, directly challenging a white woman who, in Nicki's view, had used her platform to invalidate her experiences. Years later, the Miley "What's Good" incident, born from Nicki's courage, is still cited as a pivotal VMA moment and a significant pop culture event. It demonstrated artists' growing willingness to use large platforms for social commentary and accountability. It remains a potent example of how a single, unscripted challenge from an artist like Nicki Minaj can catalyze widespread discussion on complex social issues, proving that sometimes the most impactful statements are unexpected and undeniably real. So, what's your take on all this? Do you think Nicki was justified in calling Miley out live on stage like that? Did Miley's interview comments cross a line? And has this whole thing actually changed how we talk about cultural appropriation in music? I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you're into more deep dives on unforgettable pop culture moments like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown. That 2015 VMA showdown between Nicki Minaj and Miley Cyrus was so much more than just a quick celebrity catfight. It was a raw, unfiltered moment where all these simmering tensions over respect, representation, and cultural ownership just boiled over onto one of music's biggest stages. Nicki's "Miley, what's good?" wasn't simply a question, it was a demand for accountability, a challenge that struck a chord with so many people who got the nuances of her frustration. While Miley tried to play it down, the incident really exposed the tricky parts of cultural exchange in today's music world and the power imbalances that often leave marginalized voices feeling unheard or just plain dismissed. It kicked off vital conversations that are still going on, making artists and audiences really think more critically about influence, appropriation, and the responsibility that comes with having a platform. The echoes of Miley, "What's Good?" are a lasting reminder that sometimes the most uncomfortable moments are the ones that spark the most necessary dialogues. It's still a landmark event in pop culture history, a real testament to the power of speaking your truth, even when the spotlight is cranked up to its brightest.